Okay.
That's pretty good.
Let's call the meeting to order. What is the date today? October 22nd, 2015. The Oregon City Park and Recreation Advisory Committee. And shall we have introductions starting from my right?
Dustin Moyes.
Sean Datchler.
Doug Neely.
Bob Burns.
Joyce Gifford.
Roger Pollard-Tice.
Daniel Tupper.
And
Blaine Meyer.
thank you, Blaine. Okay, the first order of business is to approve the minutes of November 24th, 2015. Do we have any corrections or additions to the minutes?
None. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
I'll second.
We have a motion, a second, to approve the minutes of September 24, 2015. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are...
I just abstain.
You're going to abstain?
I wasn't here.
Okay, we have one abstention. At this time, we will recognize our guests. And this is under item number 4 for any citizen comments on issues or items not on the agenda. And we have some special guests from the Girl Scouts and their advisor. Would you mind coming up to the podium and bring the support that you might need? Introduce yourselves. And
So I just was going to do a short introduction. This is a cadet troop, and I'm their leader. And a couple of the girls live right in the McLaughlin neighborhood, and they were thinking about things that they could be involved in their neighborhood. So they wanted to share some ideas about the parks in their neighborhood and potentially, you guys can bring a chair up, see if you guys would support a grant they're thinking about applying for.
okay, be sure and speak into the microphone so we can record all of your comments.
So we were walking around our neighborhood and we found 2 parks that have they don't usually get used anymore. First park is Barclay Park and the second park is La Tourette Park. La Tourette Park is now just 2 cemented tennis courts and 2 very small basketball hoops. We think that if we could apply for the grant Karma for Kara, we could maybe throw a party here and invite the city members and local town members and see what they would put in La Tourette Park, like ideas for La Tourette Park.
I live in the McLaughlin neighborhood, and my mom has a preschool, and she would like to take her preschoolers to the Barclay Park, but it's no longer there, and it's just cement and gravel and dirt. And
You want me to pass it around?
sure.
The girls went and they took pictures of the park, so one's on one side.
There's no parks for my brother or me to play in. And we were hoping that we could put another park in because nobody can play there. And only 7 people work in the Barclay Park. And
Okay. Anybody else?
The Karma for Kara grant is a grant specifically for kids to apply for. It's for kids, middle school and high schoolers, to apply for funds to do different things in their community. So, and I think, like Kate said, they had this idea, because they have some ideas about what they might want for the park, but maybe the community wants other things. So they thought they also like throwing parties and whatever, but to get people to come out, and as one of the things Kate said when we were talking about this, and who would come? And she says, I have 5 friends. and each of them have 5 friends that they'd want to be able to get information from. So we wanted to, you know, when we were talking to different people, they kept saying, well, you should go to the Parks Committee and talk to the Parks Committee. And then I spoke with Scott Archer, and he said that that you would actually be talking about La Tourette tonight. And it's just an idea that's out there because, of course, before, you know, in order for them to apply for the grant, they're going to have to do kind of research on putting together what the proposal would be, you know, research the budget, figure out, you know, what different elements of that kind of party outreach event would be.
I have a question. What is there a limit on the grant?
It's a $250 to $1,000.
Okay.
And the way that they distribute the funds really is through like gift cards. So let's say if you were doing flyers, you can go get a gift card to Kinko's so you could use it to make the flyers. Or if you were you needed lumber or doing something, they have like gift cards to Home Depot.
So the grant is really for a campaign.
It could be a
Fundraising.
campaign, or it could be like if your thing was to build a bench, you know, it would allow you to build the materials, buy the materials to build a bench. But it depends on what your community, you know, your idea is. But it's not direct dollars, it's these gift cards.
What is the source of the funding again?
It's an organization called Karma for Kara. And so it was a youth who was very active in giving, but then she passed away, so their family does this, you know, has kind of this little bit of foundation.
So their idea is to do some kind of a public survey to see what kind of improvements would be made in the parks? Is that what you're proposing?
It would be more of a party, right?
Yeah,
For
but we
what
would also
purpose?
take recommendations.
Take recommendations for improvements?
Yeah. So perhaps maybe have it at La Tourette Park, right? And have different ideas of what it, you know, maybe they would have games, have people play tennis or basketball, or have different pictures of what can be done in a park, and then get ideas and feedback from people on that, and perhaps, you know, talk to you guys about what you're thinking for that park, right? So
So the party would just spark community interest and try and get the
Right.
fire
Yeah.
going.
yeah,
For the neighborhood to
yeah, get the neighborhood involved. I think one of the things that they've been concerned about, like the Barclay, you know, there's all of a sudden there was more people there and using, and now they're not. So how do we get people engaged in that neighborhood again? What can make people come? You know, the families and stuff.
Well, anybody have any questions or suggestions for our visitors tonight?
Well, I wanted to make one comment. Barclay Park, the green part, has been identified as a future dog park where people could take their dogs, and I think the intent is to fence it so the dogs can't take off. Is that a plan or not?
Not fencing as of right now, anyway. But it is one of the 3 off-leash areas that is just going to be incorporated into the general park area. So it is an off-leash area, but not fenced in.
I was wondering, first of all, I want to say that I lived for 24 years right across the street from Barclay Park.
I lived just across the way.
So we saw each other, did we?
Well, I
Backyards might
could
be
see you from Amy and Fong's house.
Okay, yeah, and yeah, he was my backdoor neighbor. Yeah. And of course, Ladderette Park is very close to there too, so I'm
Yeah.
very interested in these parks. Mr. Chair, I was going to wonder, is it possible, I'll ask Scott too, that we take 6B and 6C and advance them on the agenda? They both deal with Barclay Park and Ladderette Park. Is that possible? And whether these ladies could stay around a little bit to hear that discussion? Is that possible?
One clarification. Yeah, that's up to. I think that's up to the chair. Clarification: the Barclay Hills Park is the one. That's
Oh, excuse me.
over
I'm
by the
sorry.
cemetery,
That's a different
so-
park. My apologies.
But you're correct on
Yeah.
C that.
Yeah. Could we advance Ladderette Park up on the agenda? Is that okay for us?
What's your proposal to advance the discussion we had on Ladderette Park up and to include it with this conversation?
So these ladies
Yeah.
could actually listen to the discussion.
Well, I think that's a good idea, because we have had a lot of discussion around what the plans should be for Lotterbet Park. So we had that on the agenda tonight. And so it might be instructive for you to hear what our thinking is, what's gone on so far. We've had some activity there over the last year or two, but a lot of improvements are needed. So why don't we just move 6C up and include that in the discussion at the present time? Okay. All right, then why don't we, Scott, can you give us some information on Lotterbet Park? We had a brief discussion last meeting about continuing some of the work that we've been planning there. So why don't you brief us on where we are?
Sure, thank you. So yeah, I know you talked about it at your last meeting, and I think it was discussed to continue that discussion here tonight at this meeting. There was, I believe, so I wasn't at the last meeting, you recall, but I think the discussion was kind of focused on the college student project that had been done there, and whether we should continue to do something additional or more with that, maybe seek out somebody to do another project like that to kind of complete the park, I think was the gist of it. Additionally, I just think in general that we've been talking about Lotterbet Park for quite a while. Obviously, it's in dire need of some type of TLC or upgrades or whatever you want to say. So we've been talking about what kind of things we might be able to do and that type of thing. And it just so happened that Karen contacted me this week, and the timing was great. So that tied in nicely. And then also another bit of timing, I was contacted by another citizen in the last 2 or 3 weeks, probably 3 weeks ago at this point, a community member who lives in the neighborhood near Lotterbet also, who has some grant writing experience and is just an interested parent of either a young child or some young children, and wanted to see something done there, and offered to participate in helping with some discussions and potentially, if there were some grant funding available that we could be competitive for, that she offered to assist with that. I'm not certain what the grants would be at this point. It was a very preliminary conversation. So anyway, just wanted to report that there's a citizen who offered to provide some volunteer services for those types of things. And then obviously you've heard the young ladies here maybe wanting to, I think the idea is great to sort of talk with the neighborhood and see what would be of interest.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the big question, is if we were going to do something, what is it that we would do? And so certainly I'd welcome the idea of holding a get-together in the neighborhood, and I think my recommendation to the young ladies would be that we would maybe focus on Lotterbet, but I don't want to steer you completely away from Barclay Park. But I think that may be more of something that we could really use some help in gaining some community support and ideas. One other piece just to mention in the conversation here to consider is that so Barclay Park, as a reminder to the committee members, if you're not familiar, is the green space just down the hill from Eastham School on 12th Street. And we talked about the off-leash area that's basically coming online there, but also the preschool that used to occupy and rent from the school district had some playground equipment that was either adjacent to and even actually kind of came a little bit into our property. When there were some agreements between the city and the school district that they had to move that equipment back onto their property for some legal reasons. And then, as it turned out, they ended up renting Mount Pleasant School from the city and moving out of Eastham. So they took the equipment off of the site, the play equipment, which the community had viewed as it's just park equipment. So they didn't, community members don't differentiate if it's the school or if it's the park or if it's a private school, and it's a private school of some type. But they allowed the community to use that equipment, and now it's gone. So there have been I've received some contacts from community members, and actually one of our city commissioners has asked me about it, that there sort of is a feeling that all of a sudden there's a reduced level of service at that park, even though it wasn't the city's equipment, it was available to the public. Should we consider putting in some play equipment at that site? I've heard from some community members, especially with young children, that they would love to see some equipment back at the park again. So those are just some things we're thinking about, and I guess that's kind of putting everything on the table for you to think and talk about.
They actually did not take the play equipment with them. They bulldozed it, and
Okay.
we saw it scattered
It went away.
everywhere.
Some of it, I understand, some of it got relocated to the new site, but yeah, I think some of it was in a condition that wasn't salvageable or what have you. So yeah, good point.
Okay, so where do we want to go from here?
I want to make a, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask
Sorry.
a question for clarification, Scott. It's my recollection that the city commission has earmarked certain funds for park needs that are dire needs. And so these, like Ladderette, if we deemed it appropriate, would be one of those key candidates for that. Can you talk to that a little bit?
You are correct. Yeah, we do have in the current budget some. It's sort of a new source of funding that we receive for some of our deferred maintenance, and it does allow us. And Ladderette was one of the sites on that deferred maintenance list. So we do have some funding available to consider. We have to consider that within the priorities of all the other things, and it's not a large sum of money, but it is something that we can consider and think about. Mm-hmm.
One more thing, we had a discussion 2 or 3 months ago about a home site for the pickleball group, and Ladderette was brought up at that time too, as kind of a home court for the pickleball activity.
Just met with those folks yesterday on site at Hillendale. Mm-hmm. They had requested to meet and talk about. So it's going quite well at Hillendale. Those tennis and basketball courts at Hillendale Park were minimally used for other purposes, and I guess I would summarize it to say that it's been quite successful, and they're very happy with that site. And they're already talking about, and I was going to bring this up to you at another future meeting because we're just in a preliminary conversation. They're requesting some kind of expansion of the use of that site and some additional improvements. Speaking of deferred maintenance, those courts need to be resurfaced and some things like that. So they're kind of talking about, can we work together? So I think that we've kind of they found a place that they really have adopted in Hillendale, and I don't think we'll be going back to that Ladderette site with that group. That's a good
Chair,
question.
if I may. I think the idea is that the Girl Scouts have of applying for a grant so that they can hold an open house event or party or something to invite the neighborhood, to have the neighbors come and have input as to what they would like to see at the Ladderette site. I think that this committee should write a letter of support for them in their grant application so that we can move forward. And, I don't know if you were thinking about the time of year when this event needs to happen. Obviously we need to have some nice weather, but I do believe that Parks and Rec might have a couple of canopies that might be able to be used at the event in case of inclement weather. But I would move that the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee write a letter of support to Girl Scout Troop. What is it?
5064.
45064 in holding an event, a neighborhood event at Ladderette Park.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor, moved and seconded, that the advisory committee write a letter of recommendation for the Girl Scout troop to hold, I guess, an input session.
Yeah, a letter of support.
A letter of
Yes.
support. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? The motion is approved. So we will get to work on that.
Excellent. Well, we'll work with Scott and see. Right now, at this point, the event probably won't happen until, spring or whatnot,
Okay.
because it'll take us a
Great.
while to do different stuff. But thank you very much.
Very good. Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done.
Good job.
No cookies tonight?
What? In the spring, cookie season is in March, so, once the event, there just may be cookies.
Thank you, girls. Good job.
I think we're on item number 5, special presentations. And we have Pete Walter to discuss Beaver Creek Road concept plan update.
Remind you that you can switch your screen over to presentation mode, and you'll be able to view what's on the screen behind you without turning around, unless you like to turn around and watch the big screen.
You got to push down on it and then move it. There it goes. Except I didn't do mine.
Yeah.
Hard group to follow.
Oh,
Yeah, that's right.
Focused. Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me on your agenda this evening. My name is Peter Walter. I'm with the Oregon City Planning Department, and we're located at 221 Malala Avenue, where Pearl Street crosses Malala. That's where our office is. And tonight I am going to briefly present to you the process for the readoption of the Beaver Creek Road concept plan. Some of you are familiar with this plan and other concept plans that the city has done. Basically, what a concept plan is an area plan for an area within the urban growth boundary, most of which is not yet annexed to the city. So it's within the urban growth boundary, but it's in the county. And in order for lands within that area to become urbanized and incorporated into the city, the first thing that the city has to do is a concept plan. And following adoption of the concept plan, such things as annexation and zoning and urban level of development can occur. So this is a requirement of being a member city of Metro, and Metro provides the funding for the concept plan. So I'll give you a brief history of the Beaver Creek Road concept plan and explain to you why we're here today. I'll refer back to this map on several occasions. But here's the history behind the plan. Back in 2007, 2008, a lot of people in the community put a lot of time and effort into working on the Beaver Creek Road concept plan. It was developed with strong community input, and it was adopted by the City Commission in September of 2008. However, it was then appealed to the State Land Use Board of Appeals for various reasons, and it was remanded, which means it was sent back to the city and Metro to resolve certain acreage issues with employment land. Half of the land area in the concept plan is required to be designated for employment or industrial land use. And so what happened, and I'm not going to go into a lot of the details here, I'm just skipping over some of the basic points. Metro adopted a revised Title IV, which is an employment lands map, in 2010, and that readoption by the city was further delayed to various legal objections, which had to do with the much larger urban growth boundary, Multnomah County, Clackamas County, Washington County. And Metro, when they do their estimates, looks at the entire UGB and the employment capacity of the entire area. So due to that and other urban reserve issues, because at that time Clackamas County and all the other counties were looking at their urban reserves as well, further legal delays. Those issues were finally settled through the state legislature grand bargain in 2014. And the final appeal issues for Oregon City, at least, were dismissed, and the city is now free to proceed with the readoption of the Beaver Creek Road concept plan on remand. So how do we intend to approach it this time around?
Pete, what's the
Yeah.
purpose of readoption, though? That's the part
Yeah.
I'm missing out of it.
Well, we still have a draft plan.
Okay.
We have not adopted it.
Gotcha,
Yeah.
okay.
And following our adoption of it, we can actually start enacting some implementing things like zoning and those sorts of things. But the very first step is readoption of this draft plan.
So, excuse me, on that point, though, Pete, you did say that the city commission adopted the plan, but I think they approved it, but then because of the LUBA appeal, it wasn't officially adopted. Is that what the
a
issue
plan in
is?
order to be completely adopted has to be sent to the state
Right.
and acknowledged by the Department of
I think
Land
that's
Conservation and
I
Development.
think that's the point of.
So really, it
Yeah.
just never got approved in the beginning. And
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Didn't get all the
It didn't get, it wasn't affected. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So what we're dealing with, and I don't have the plan document in front of me, but it's a 64-page plan document and a set of technical appendices. It's a very big record. We are going to have an electronic copy of the entire record available, but it's not available yet. The draft plan, the 64-page document and all its record and appendices, we're not intending to revise that. Means the vision, the goals and policies, the land use areas, the transportation system, the initial trails, parks, open space, all of those things that were drafted in 2007 are good, hard, solid planning work. What's changed is since 2007, 2008, we've put into effect several public facilities updates for our public facilities planning, which have taken this area into account. In spite of the fact that it was not fully adopted, we use it as our best planning document for the future land use of the area. So our transportation system plan, 2013, the sewer master plan, water master plan, and our stormwater design standards all take this area into account and are based on its cost estimates, its conceptual estimates for pipe size, trails, roads, all of these things. And some of these things, I'll refer back to this, are required to be part of a concept plan. You've got to have a natural resources, parks, and open space element. You've got to have, in this case, an employment lands element, housing, schools, amenities, all modes of transportation, zoning, infrastructure, and financing. All of these things are required to be part of a concept plan by Metro, who ultimately approves the city's plan, and then it goes to the state. I just want to briefly cover how much community engagement was done in 2007. So this list is sort of a bullet point list of how we went about doing that. We had a citizen advisory and a technical advisory committee. They had 12 meetings, study area visits, 2 open houses. Metro was heavily involved, especially on the employment lands discussion. There was a community design workshop, and if you look through the plan, you'll see that all these different maps were made by the groups, and they went into where they thought the best land use arrangements should go, which ultimately resulted in a hybrid plan. There was a sustainability focus group, a market focus group, and all the things that you need to get the word out, including a website, posters, signs, mailers. That was before it went into public hearings, and you have, in this case, 4 planning commission hearings followed by 10 city commission hearings. So that pretty much summarizes the community engagement portion in the adoption process. Let's see. Sorry. I don't intend to skip around here. What came out of that process were a set of goals and policies for a complete and sustainable community. I'll go over the acreages in a little bit here. It's intended to be, at build-out, a model of sustainable design, creating green jobs, providing sustainable industries. There's a lot of natural areas that people wanted to make sure were well preserved and treated. In particular, there's a need to preserve the capacity and safety of Beaver Creek Road as well as roads and trails are put into this area, those need to provide options for all modes of transportation, not just vehicles, pedestrians, etc. A programmatic cross-connection between Oregon City High School and Clackamas Community College is very, very important, not only because of the employment lands issue, but also because of the land uses in this area and the fact that those are surrounded by existing campus industrial zoning, and the potential for job creation in this part of the city is very good if the plan is put into place. It has a unique sense of place. There are existing neighborhoods which deserve to be preserved, and we need to be sensitive as development occurs to the needs of surrounding subdivisions. And very important is the streams, wetlands, open space areas, trees, and those sorts of things that contribute to the ecological health of this area. Specifically, what we were going to look at tonight are the plan's open space and natural areas. All of these are conceptual in nature, will be subject to much more refined planning. But what I'm showing you here is what's called their open space and natural areas map. Where you're seeing the lighter green, or so the more fuzzy green areas, are what they're calling ESRAs, or environmentally sensitive resource areas. The triangular shape in the middle of the plan area is an area of trees that was very important. You have Title III and Title 13 stream corridors. Trimble Creek runs through the area. You have the area to the east is known as the East Ridge, which is at about 490-foot elevation. That is a geologic hazard or active geologic area, which is very steeply sloped, as well as a natural area. There's a desire for a central open space through paralleling Beaver Creek Road in the center of the plan area. And you can see underneath with the aerial photo here where the golf course is. That's the southernmost portion of the site. Old Acres Lane is the southernmost road, and Thayer Road is the northernmost road. Then Myers Road, Loader Road, Glen Oak Road, and Claremont would all eventually be extended through the area as collector level roads. There's a transportation plan as a separate plan, but I can show you that. In total, I need to look at this. I'll get to that. So the plan text talks about open space being a network of green spaces which would provide connected parks, open space, and natural areas that links all of these sensitive areas together, provides access to nature, provides for the tree and natural area preservation, but also you could potentially use these areas to provide stormwater and water quality facilities. And that way you are able to utilize them not only as trail and open space and park amenities, but also as areas where we can allow for what's called low impact development stormwater use, and that's part of our latest stormwater design standards that were adopted. So there's some dovetailing certainly between the stormwater design standards that we recently adopted and the desire in this plan to minimize the amount of stormwater flow that comes off-site and goes into the rivers, and provide a more natural way to manage stormwater as it urbanizes. Specifically, the two areas that are talked about in the plan for open space and parks, the South Central open space concept, it's going to be a process of further refinement as we look at master planning in the future, but the idea is that park space would be provided consistent with the parks master plan at the level shown here, which is 6 to 10 acres per 1,000 capita per 1,000 people population. It could be distributed in multiple park spaces, consistent with whatever's proposed for land use at the time. But the desire is for a central park location with linearity that is consistent with Metro's Goal 5 mapping. This was identified by several citizens groups during the design workshop in 2006, and that is really intended to be a connected and contiguous open space in there. The second major feature is called the East Ridge, which I talked about earlier, and that establishes an open space area without any development near the 490-foot elevation area. It's a open space window of approximately 7,000 feet long with a trail corridor running next to it. It provides significant view corridors. Potentially small public parks could be located in this area, and would be part of a trail system called the East Ridge Trail System in here. Referring back to that, the central open space you can see here, and just east of there is the East Ridge. You also have significant power line corridor easements in this area, which are a constraint to any kind of structure development, but you can potentially use those areas for roads, crossing them, potentially use them for parking areas, stormwater management, and certainly for open space use, although there are concerns that people and users have about being below power line corridors due to noise or electromagnetic radiation, that sort of thing. So they'd have to be designed sensitively. This is an aerial photo that was provided at the initial information gathering part of the process. So you can see the yellow line representing the planning area, and the blue line represents the city limit that was in place at that time, which was 2006. Significant part of the southern portion of the site is the Oregon City Golf Course. As far as the land use areas go, I will refer back to this map. Sorry for jumping around. So the final hybrid land use map, and these are sort of bubble diagrams. They're not hard edges, but the metro mapping that was done requires that we have at least 120 acres net of industrial or light industrial employment generating land, which is the blue area known as the North Employment Campus. That would allow certain land uses similar to our campus industrial zone, which is sort of a light manufacturing zone, potentially office headquarters, things of that nature, fairly large campus type designs. The difficulty in this being realized is the parcelization of the area and fragmented ownership. So it'll be a challenge to be able to see this all come to fruition, but the timeline that was envisioned when the plan was adopted was 2027. Pretty ambitious considering now we've adopted a transportation system plan which pushes that out to 2035 realistically for our TSP. It's a 20-year horizon. And we have significant public facilities challenges and costs associated with serving the area with sewer and water and those sorts of things. So I'll go over that briefly. The other land use areas that you see here directly across from the high school is an area known as the Mixed Employment Village. This is an area where a portion of that area is actually already in the city. It's been in the city since 1979, I believe. It was zoned mixed-use corridor in 2010 and was recently approved for a live, work, and apartment complex of 180 units designed to be consistent with the Beaver Creek Road concept plan. It's about an 11-acre site directly across. And Myers Road's extension would be built with that section. Right, pretty much right where it says mixed employment village on this map is where that apartment unit's been approved. We don't expect it to be constructed until probably 2017 at this stage, possibly 2016, but there's some other work to be done. That's the only new development that's been approved in this area because everything else is waiting for adoption of a plan. It's all got a designation of future urban, which is a county zone, which does not allow urbanization of the area until the plan can be adopted by the city.
Just for clarification,
Sure.
the you said 180 units, was that? That's not the whole area. This is just
No.
one that's been approved. So
Yeah.
that's just a portion of that purple area. Is that right?
Right. It's a triangular area. I'll try to outline it here. Right here, about 11 acres.
Maybe about a third of that red area.
Yeah, about a third of that. And it's kind of, if it's constructed, it'll be great because it will set up the initial collector level type road into that site, and the remaining parcels that abut that site, which are under the Hall family, potentially could tag along and after that.
Was that the airport field?
Pardon?
Was that the airfield?
That's a little bit farther south.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think where the airfield is right around here.
Okay.
Because you've got the strip coming in like that. Anyway, yeah, not yet. So let me get back to where I was. Sorry. Those land use areas total in acreage about 284 gross and 235 net. Like I said, about 127 acres of the area would be the North Employment Campus, then 21 acres mixed employment village, 8 acres of the Main Street area, and then the two mixed use neighborhoods are primarily where the golf course would be is. Differing densities. I believe they're talking about the west mixed use neighborhood being the lower density neighborhood of about 8 units per acre, and the east mixed use neighborhood being about 22 units per acre. But this is very conceptual. It works out to about 10 units per acre for the whole site. And what that means in terms of parks, open space, and natural areas is about 113 acres. Not all of that would be public and managed or improved by any stretch of the imagination. A lot of it would be, unimproved area like power line corridors and stormwater tracks and that kind of thing. Yes.
In that 118 acres of park and open space?
Well, the GIS analysis for the gross acreage of the whole site is 113.
113. Okay.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah, sure.
See it very good. But of that. Are they planning any trails in there, and if so, how many miles of trails?
Yeah, I've got some slides from the TSP that talk about that, because a lot of the trails were adopted into the TSP in 2013, and we'll talk about that a little bit.
And do you know what kind of trails
there are on-street sidewalk trail, then we've got shared bike and pedestrian trails, which are broken out separately as off-street trails, and then they've got bike trails, which are, it's a little hard to understand because there's some overlap in the TSP, but I'll show you where those are.
Okay.
Yeah. The job and housing estimates for the entire site are jobs 5,000 and housing 1,000 units. Most of the jobs would be created hopefully in the North Employment Campus, significant number in the mixed employment village, and the remainder in the other 3 land use areas. This is based on Eco Northwest's analysis, which is a consulting firm that was part of the team. And there's a lot of assumptions that generated these numbers. They're essentially, to get to the jobs estimates, they did a jobs per acre estimate based on Metro reports as well as Eco Northwest reports. So This is what they came for, the hybrid plan. The transportation network basic structure is shown here. As I said, the extensions of Claremont Road, which is where Clackamas Community College comes out, is shown to the north. There's envisioned a secondary collector level road that would eventually manage traffic north and south through the site to alleviate congestion on Beaver Creek Road. Would not be built right away, any of this. Then you have the Loader Road connection, Myers Road, and Glen Oak Road. There are street sections adopted for each of these levels of roads, which are considered Green Street sections, so they're all intended to have stormwater management swales built into them rather than using a traditional stormwater system. I've got some of those sections, but I didn't include them all because there's so many of them. You can also see the trail network that's shown here in the brown dotted lines. The power line trail associated here with that corridor easement. The Thimble Creek Trail runs through this central open space from north to south. Then you have the East Ridge Trail coming in and joining that. The Beaver Lake Trail, which is actually a trail shown on the Metro Regional Plan, is also shown here. And then some additional trail connections in this area.
Is this can you go back to that? Is this
Yeah.
a point where I could express a concern?
Yes.
The road that connects in the back towards Thimble Creek, Glen Oak, and so forth, that road shows an arrow going out.
Ridge Parkway.
Yeah, Ridge Parkway. Thanks. The only place it can go out to would be Thayer Road. And if that ends up being used for urban capacity, it's not going to work. It's a very rural road. I mean, I can understand the need for a road at the ridge to connect everything up.
Right.
But I'd be very, very concerned if that road extended
This-
over to Thayer.
Right here. Yeah. I see.
So,
Yeah.
if I presume that none of these things are solid right now,
No,
but
they're
I
not.
just want to get that concern out there because
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything you're going to do with Thayer, frankly, below where the development has already occurred.
Right.
And I'd be afraid that unless you can really address the capacity of Beaver Creek, other people are going to use other opportunities to get out of the city. And I'm just worried that people would use that connection there to be a mechanism of getting out of the city.
Yeah, and I don't see, certainly don't see people using that. That's not going to be built right away, and we're going to have some interim capacity issues on Beaver Creek Road, even if this development doesn't occur. We are already seeing what they call a failing intersection at 213 and 205. And as you know from the transportation system plan update, the city had adopted a new congestion standard for that intersection, basically that we're saying we're okay with it failing. And it is a difficult proposition to swallow, but it's part of the regional transportation approach with looking at congestion as something that you live with and change your behavior in reaction to. They're looking at, rather than a 1 hour peak hour traffic, you're looking at a 2 hour peak. However,
You said 213 and 205.
and 213 and Beaver Creek.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's the one I was thinking
sorry,
of as,
yeah.
as a problem.
Yeah.
When Myers Road goes through, punches through, do you think that'll alleviate any of that? Probably not, huh?
Probably not. No. Doesn't change the fact that the facilities that we adopted in the transportation system plan need to be addressed. We were talking about this earlier today with our transportation consultant, Replinger and Associates. The degree of failure doesn't change the fact that you need to provide pedestrian, bicycle, and alternative mode facilities and adopt what are called alternative mobility standards for the city. People will continue to drive and be frustrated. And in the meantime, we will do what we can to provide connectivity through our development review process. And there's just not enough money in the world to fix this problem. Yeah.
A point I might just simply make was that with the industrial land development here, the peak hour traffic's going to go the other direction. That is, it's coming into Oregon City in the morning, and that's not going to impact 213 that badly, because it's actually people are going to be coming in. It's usually going out where we have
It's going out to Portland and wherever.
And the fact that it essentially is a employment and mixed-use plan is a better land use approach for the city to take in this area than if it were a low-density residential development where people were still continuing to drive into the Portland region or elsewhere for jobs and employment and that sort of thing. So trying to make sure that the jobs housing balance can be preserved in the future at build-out. How this was adapted into the transportation system plan, so these are screen grabs or cut and paste right out of the transportation system plan. The projects that are designated with a W have very rough cost estimates associated with them. None of them are on the likely to be funded list, but they are identified with a rough cost estimate in the TSP. How they would be implemented would be through development review as potentially as exactions of development, or if other funding sources can be found as capital projects. So these are on-street walking paths primarily. The blue ones are, and then you have the brown ones would be off-street, larger shared use trails, or paralleling the roads. The biking solutions are identified with Bs. Each of these has a line item, brief description, and a cost in the TSP. And then you have what are called the shared biking walking solutions, where they're wider path. They talk about them being, I think, 12 foot to 16 foot wide, and that sort of thing. As far as costs and funding goes, this is where we're going to be providing updated estimates for the costs that look at the 2007 estimates and then based on construction price index, just put today's figures on them. The 2007 plan estimated revenue, but it didn't look at all at cost, because we didn't have strong estimates or clear estimates of exactly how much space was going to be needed or dedicated at the time. Based on employment figures and housing units, they estimated between $4 and $4 million of revenue from system development charges being paid for parks. Additional analysis of the SDCs will need to be done, and we need to look at other funding sources in order to support our findings for readoption of the plan. We also need to look closely for funding sources for the walking, biking, and shared use paths and trails, as well as the parks themselves. In the plan, it talks about it mentions that a lot of the park and open space could be dedicated by the landowner. I think that's very ambitious, but I think it may come with the right developer who has the right amount of land. For example, the golf course. who's very interested in preserving some of the open space areas and amenities that they already have if they redevelop the site. So that's something that we'll be looking at more closely. Meetings that we have had so far to update people on the readoption process are shown here. We met with Natural Resources Committee, Citizen Involvement Committee, the Planning Commission work session, Transportation Advisory Committee, and now you. I'll be meeting with Caulfield Neighborhood Association and the Hamlet of Beaver Creek next week. And then we have a City Commission work session on November 10th. Our Planning Commission hearing number 1 is scheduled and been noticed for November 23rd. And the City Commission meeting is going to be, the first hearing would be December 2nd. There's always the chance for continuation and addition of additional evidence. I do want to mention that the scope of the record that will be opening for this plan is somewhat limited. We're primarily looking at the transportation system plan costs, so the estimates and costs for that, the ability to serve the area with fire, emergency services, and schools. So I'm seeking input and written comment from Clackamas Fire District Number 1, Oregon City School District, from the Police Department, and from our solid waste provider, to B&B Leasing. The Planning Commission is advised, will be advised, to disregard evidence that is outside this limited scope of this area, because they're really trying to get the plan adopted. There'll be a lot more implementation work that follows. We're not rezoning yet. If we rezone the area, it will be a separate process with separate public noticing. Yeah. So that's our hope, and we really, really thank you for your involvement and questions. And I would like to take any questions now.
Anybody have questions of Pete?
Yeah.
I want to just comment, that plan you saw was a tremendous public input plan. The big issue that came up and got through the court battle is that when Metro put this on for the urban growth boundary and so forth, it was all supposed to be industrial. And you had people in the Thayer Neighborhood Association across Beaver Creek from the area. They didn't want to see industrial development there. So you had a lot of great input on this particular plan, and I'm glad we were able to get through the court battles and so forth and finally deal with it.
It's taken a long time. I think we have an opportunity here that would be good.
Is there anything you want from this committee?
Well, we would love your support and your thoughtful input as well as we go through the Planning Commission hearing process.
Okay.
So that's the next stage, is Planning Commission after the, the review process and.
Right. So I think we are. The record is open. We will accept any written testimony up until the end of the last City Commission hearing, when the City Commission decides they want to close the record on this. And if any of the committees wish to provide letters of support or guidance during that time, we will make it part of the record and take it into consideration in our staff report. Our staff report, which is our findings, updated findings for the City Planning Commission and City Commission, will be available 1 week prior to November 23rd. And if we get comments after that date, we will just make them part of the record after the staff report is ready. So, yeah.
Ultimately, the City Commission makes the decision.
Yes.
Okay.
This is a legislative action because it affects the policies and plans of the city. So it's called a legislative action, and it requires a hearing before the Planning Commission, or hearings, and a final decision by the City Commission. And once it's adopted, we would look for some letter acknowledging it from Metro, because Metro is going to need to say, yes, this complies with our urban growth management functional plan. That may take a while to get that letter, because we still have to adopt zoning and that sort of thing. But at least if they see we're on the right track, they can put something in the record in that regard. And then we go to the Department of Land Conservation Development for acknowledgement. There's always the chance for appeal, and we do expect it will be appealed. So there's 14 days after the City Commission adopts its final ordinance, you can appeal it to the Land Use Board of Appeals.
I guess our main interest would be the part of the plan that focuses on parks and the trails, walking,
Yes.
bicycling, and so forth, and the timeline is short.
Mm-hmm.
We have one meeting between now and the City Commission meeting of December 2nd. So if we were going to weigh in, it would have to be in our next meeting,
Can
the way I
we,
look at it.
can we weigh in independent of the planning commission's decision?
Yeah, I believe so. As
Oh,
private
because
citizens.
the planning, usually you have to make you have to make your point at the planning commission meeting in order for the city commission to
Good point.
formally consider it.
That's November 23rd.
Yeah, you can make it at the City Commission level too.
Even though it hadn't been brought up by this board at the planning commission level,
Yes. Yeah.
just because we're a board.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think regardless of whether you're, if it's going to be consensus of the board, yeah, you can. That would certainly make
Okay.
sense. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments from committee members?
Well, I'm certainly impressed with the emphasis on parks and greenway and trails. I think that a letter from our committee would be appropriate to support the plan. So I'd like to move that we draft a letter in support to the Planning Commission.
We have a motion and a second to give our support to the plan. Any other discussion or comments?
I will be voting no because I don't believe that in a 40-minute presentation that we're qualified to be making that yet. While I commend you for the work, and I would most likely agree, I don't feel qualified at this time to vote yes.
Any other comments or discussion?
The maps that we can see on our screen are pretty small, so yeah, some deeper reading
Yeah.
into that 65-page document, I think is called for.
I would be much more in favor of voting at the next meeting if the motion was rescinded at this meeting.
Who made the motion? Was it Blaine? What do you think? Want to go ahead with the vote? The date of our next meeting would give us time, would it not?
No, it wouldn't, because that's
No.
Thanksgiving Day.
I was
Yeah.
gonna mention that. I think there's a little bit of a timing issue I want to bring up so that you're fully aware. And this was going to be discussed later in your meeting about the next PrAC meeting. It falls, as it always does, in Thanksgiving because the fourth Thursday is always. It always does in November because the fourth Thursday is always on Thanksgiving, so we always have that conflict. So you would need to select an alternative date.
And December also never works, so we always pick a date between
Right.
those two.
We've typically done at least the last few years that I can recall, we've done the week after, which in this case is December 3rd. We could also do the week prior, which would be November 19th. There might be some issues with, I know there's a scheduling issue with this room, typically on that week prior to our meeting. So we don't let that affect your decision. If you'd prefer to meet earlier because of this potential timing issue, we'll find a place to meet. That's not an issue. We just wouldn't be able to record the meeting like this. But so you've got other options, or you could pick a different date altogether. But those are the dates. But in order to review this before at least the first commission meeting, And as Pete said, though, I would
That would be
want
a
to say
continuance.
that what's that?
There will probably be continuance.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
going to say. Is it may not be that 12/2 is the absolute timeline, because there's
These are-
potential, and potentially maybe we could request it be continued out so that the PrAC could offer a letter of either support or otherwise, or whatever your input is. So we might be able to do something like that.
Well, we still have a motion on the floor.
Could I make a request maybe to reconsider the nature of the motion and make the motion in support of the plan giving due consideration to parks and trails in the system, and actually make it focus on what we do, and not necessarily giving the support to the plan, its
Right.
whole
Yeah.
plan itself.
And that was my intent.
That would
Yeah.
work for me.
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
that.
So,
I do too.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say that this doesn't give us a whole lot of time, Pete, so there's a lot of pressure on us to give support, which I would like to do, but I don't know much about it either. Just a
Certainly,
few
yeah.
minutes of
It's been a long
discussion.
time since it was
Yeah.
first looked at. Yeah.
So now what do we do?
Well, I guess it's whether the second would approve that kind of amendment.
Oh, I would approve that, yes.
And then I think it's something we probably can vote on, and not necessarily just indicate a support for the whole plan.
I would agree.
Could we clarify what the amended motion is?
Somebody has to make a motion.
well, the amended motion would be that we are lending our support from the perspective of the parks and greenway and trails, that we are in support of that part of the plan.
Could we see that map on our screen again, please?
The map for okay, yeah. There's this open space and natural areas map.
No, not at all.
I don't think we have any place in the city where we've considered such a trail system as this one.
What's that?
I don't think we have an example of where we've considered such an extensive trail system as this one anywhere in the city.
Oh, this isn't the trail system map, though, is it?
No, you need to go to the TSP map.
Yeah, there's another one.
Yeah, walking.
There it
Yeah.
went. There it went.
Oh, those,
Uh,
okay, between the two, okay.
The blues and the brown
So
lines.
there's three sections in the TSP that really deal with
What's the open space?
walking, walking combined.
I'd like to have copies of those.
Certainly. I will put this presentation and the links to the transportation system plan
Great.
on the project website.
Well, do we have a clear motion to vote on? And so we'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion to support the parks and trails?
If we could have the motion read so I know what I'm voting on,
I
please.
was restating it,
Oh.
but somebody go ahead.
Okay.
I'll just tell you what I've got is the amended motion is to and the wording is a little vague to me, but to support the parks and trails portion of the plan. You can interpret how you want with what the word support means, but that's what I heard.
Yeah.
That's good.
If you'd like if you'd like me to make that more clear, I'm just trying to attempt to put it in the words that I'm hearing.
You can elaborate without changing the meaning.
Because there are no designated parks currently in the plan. It's just certain amount of acreage has to be designated for parks, or
So many per thousand.
Yeah, and I think that, so what you have there, I guess the question then for Scott, as this discussion continues, is are the numbers that he's presented in keeping with our current Parks Master Plan requirements?
That's where those came from.
I was expecting a yes.
Yeah.
So then, absolutely, we should be able to support the plan because it's keeping with our document that we have approved.
Do we want to add anything like we support and provide ongoing input? I mean, do we want to have anything like that in there? Because this is going to be a long, drawn-out process, and we're going to be addressing multiple issues that are going to come up individually from this plan that are going to come before this group. So probably long after all of us are out of the group. So
I'd favor that.
I don't know if we get bored of that way.
Yeah, sorry.
I was just suggesting maybe put it into and look forward to providing additional input on the trails and parks development. Would that be work?
That sounds, yeah.
So to support and provide ongoing input into the Parks and Trails portion of the plan? Is that
Good.
what I'm hearing? Okay.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks for coming out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, we are on general business. Willamette Falls Legacy Project update.
Mr. Chair,
How do I turn this on?
Mr. Chair, can I make one comment that this October 27th, Tuesday, at the Abernathy Chapel, from 11:30 to 1, the Oregon City Business Alliance is giving a presentation on the Beaver Creek Corridor developments that Clackamas Community College and Eric Underwood is going to be one of the speakers, and then also Shelley Perini. So if you're interested in attending, let me know after the meeting, and I'll get you the information. So
What was that date again?
October 27th, it's a Tuesday,
27th, next
It's,
week.
it starts at 11:30 or something.
11:30 to
luncheon
1,
meeting.
and yeah, it's a presentation and a luncheon and so forth. So
Yeah, but you got to pay for the food.
yes, yep.
You're not inviting to us and going to say you'll treat us.
No. Nice try.
Nice try over there.
Read
Let's
my mind
move on
again.
to an update on the Willamette Falls Legacy Project. And this is Scott.
This can be pretty quick. So the update, this is just your standing update, but the next thing coming up, as you all know, is we've got the tour scheduled of the site for those of you that are interested and available. It will be next Friday, a week from tomorrow, October 30th at 2 p.m. And we certainly would hope that you can join us. Tony Conkle will be providing the tour, and I'll be there as well to help out. Just a reminder that if you're able to go, please do dress weather appropriate. You have a good chance of getting wet even on a dry day if we make it out to as we get out to the edge of where we can walk, which is kind of referred to as the dance floor. It gets a little wet because of the spray of the falls, which is one of the really cool things about going out there. And then please wear sturdy shoes. No open-toed shoes or sandals of any type are required by the property owner, and the city tries to abide by those things. So I would be interested to know who's all going to attend. It does help with us to plan a little bit. If you're able to let me know. Okay, that's good. And
like
yes, and I'm
everybody.
going to talk about that, Sean. And then we did have two, I had a request from two of the members, whether an associate or a colleague or another community member could join the tour. We do have the capacity to have additional people with our tour, but so long as I just want to make sure that the rest of the group was okay, that they understood that there might be a couple extra people along. We've got room for somewhere around 12 to 14 people. So right now we're well, and also I've got a couple of my staff members joining us, so we're up to about 12, and we could probably squeeze another person or two in there if we had to. So we're right at about the right number. So we do have room for a couple extra folks that were asked if they could join us, and I'm fine with that as long as Prac is.
Could you repeat both the date and the time again, please?
October 30th, 2 o'clock.
Next Friday.
Where do we meet?
At the building on Main Street across on the south side of 99,
Okay.
what would be called the old administration building. You can pull in. Just the best way to go in there is to come down Main Street on through downtown going south, cross 99 at the light, just go past the front of the building, and as you come past the front of the building and before you hit the gated area where you can't proceed any further because of the fencing, you take a right. There's kind of a little alleyway, and it goes around the building. There's a parking lot that you park in the back. It's called the back of the building. It might seem like the front because it actually faces 99. So just circle around the building, and you'll have a parking area to pull into there. Unless you wanted to park up here and walk or whatever you want to do. So
Should
And
we
I was going to
dress?
say, as a reminder for parking, that at 4 o'clock is the trick or treat downtown that night. So
thank you.
I'm paying attention to where I park so I can get out
Very
of town
good.
without dealing with that.
I was going to mention the same thing and ask whether or not we should dress in costume for the tour.
You can.
Yeah.
Very good point, yeah.
Go ahead.
We'll be done, we should be done and cleared out right about the time that begins, so it will be a little busy in there, but you could actually pull right back out onto 99 and not have to come back through downtown or whatever, so if you park back there. But yeah, that's a great point, thanks.
Okay.
So how will you know when you reach the numbers? You said there was room for a couple of extra people. How do you know?
Well,
we don't want to all show up with extra people.
No, I wasn't suggesting that you do. I was saying, I was kind
Oh.
of specifically saying I had 2 requests.
Oh, okay.
And I was kind of looking for general approval that you don't mind that a couple of
Oh,
non-PrAC
all right.
members came along. And then if anybody else had somebody, if you could just let me know, I guess it would be, I'll kind of go first come, first serve, but I got to double check our numbers, but it looks like we're going to have a pretty full tour, which is wonderful. So, good, okay.
Next
Excellent.
item.
Thanks. So moving on, the Barkley Hills Playground, Barkley Hills Park Playground, and again, the Barkley Hills Park is different than the Barkley Park
Sorry
over.
about that.
Yeah, no, that's just a good reminder for everybody. Barkley Hills Park is the one that is over by the just down the hill from the cemetery, kind of up above Newell Canyon there. A nice little neighborhood park. So that this was discussed, I think, briefly at your last meeting. And there's a little update to that, is why I'm bringing it back to you. The playground is being replaced. It's in our budget. This is not because this is a replacement. It's basically considered a maintenance issue. It's not coming out of our parks SDCs, but it's coming out of our general fund. We request in every budget cycle, going back a few budget cycles, to replace a playground or 2 in each budget cycle, and so this was one of those that was identified. We basically had to close down much of this playground over the last year because parts of it were failing, and then it got to the point where we just had to just take the whole thing down. So there is no playground there. There's a smaller tot playground. This is the bigger, the older kids' playground that I'm referring to. We also have an existing swing set, and then the younger kids' playground is still in place at the site. What was mentioned to you last time was that the high school construction class had kind of pivoted their project. They were originally going to do some work at Atkinson Park. Because of some timing and potentially budget issues and some different things, in order to accomplish a project in this school year, they came to us and kind of talked about, what else could we do, and we pointed them towards this project that our budget's pretty tight on the replacement, and there were some things like putting in curbing, doing grading. This is on a pretty significant slope, so we're going to actually have to do some work with that and leveling it out to make the playground work. And some of that kind of stuff that we could make this project work a lot better, and they jumped on that, and they're engaged fully in this project. We in fact just had John Waverly, our maintenance supervisor, and I just met with the class on site today out there, and they've got there's some markings out there already you would see if you went by there. So they are fully engaged, and they've actually come up with a little schematic. The class would like to also, in addition to helping us replace the playground, they want to do maybe some additional features like build a few extra benches to sit on, put an entry sign into the park. We actually don't have a sign that says Barkley Hills Park right now. It's there's a few neighborhood parks that are sort of smaller and older that don't have those signs. They might want to put up a little aesthetic fence at the front of the park just to give it a little bit of a nicer look. And then they're also proposing to build a small structure that would be kind of like a picnic table shelter. Not sure if that's going to all work out for timing and finances, but we're definitely focused on playground first, and then we'll kind of work down the list from there. So we're moving pretty quickly. So the kids have to get a lot of things done and they only can work, like an hour a school day is kind of how that goes. And so the idea is that we are going to pay for the materials to purchase the equipment as we had planned on. They're going to do the work that would normally be done by a contractor. Whenever we build a playground, we have to, there's excavation and there's curbing with concrete and some different things, and some other typical things that go along with that, building in some drainage, fixing things like that. They're going to do those components. They received a grant from the Metro Enhancement Fund that they have gotten on numerous projects. Believe they have up to $18,000 that they can spend in materials, which will go pretty quickly on this one because there's a lot to, as I said, especially the grade is the biggest issue. But what they're doing is basically helping us build a better playground than we would have been able to because the money is stretched because of what they're doing. We are intending to put in the rubberized playground tiles for fall material instead of bark chips, the wood chips, as we've talked about pretty extensively at some recent meetings. We're hoping to do that whenever we build a new playground. It's a pretty significant upfront investment, but I think it pays for itself times over in the long run, and it's just better for maintenance purposes. So we're working towards that. So again, the high school group is helping us to accomplish some things and probably build a bigger and better playground than we would have because we don't have to spend money on some of those ancillary things. I've given you at your places a little picture of a kind of a computerized designed schematic that we're looking at for the we've kind of arrived at for the equipment that we're proposing, sort of based loosely on the playground that we built at Kanema Neighborhood Park when we put a new playground in there. Has a little bit more of the earth tone colors versus the bright, and it has some of the features that kind of, we sort of consider simulate natural play a little bit more. It's still kind of a typical climbing and playing structure, but with some of those types of things. We're planning to contact the Barkley Hills Neighborhood Association to inform them of that. We'll show them the schematic and kind of explain. And actually, the kids at the high school program are going to help us write some of those notices to the neighborhood and get it. They tend to get involved with those types of things. So we're moving pretty quickly. We wanted to let PrAC know, but we typically we might have a design a playground selection committee, but we sort of had that built in with the high school kids, and then, as I said, we're going to work through the neighborhood association, and then we're presenting it to you tonight. But we're kind of fast tracking it because the school class has to get going on a number of things to move on their timeline in order that we would be able to get it built within the school year. And that's what our goal is. And again, because of the timing of, if we hired a contractor, we would just say, come in and they would knock it out in 30 days or whatever the time would be. But they have to do it an hour at a time or 45 minutes at a time over the course of the school year, and they take the holiday breaks and all that stuff. So we're working with that timeline, so it kind of stretches it out as far as when it'll be done, but it gets us a much better playground. So.
Okay.
So that's the latest and greatest, and I guess the kind of what I'm looking to you for is just, first of all, just update, let you know what's going on. Secondly, if you have any concerns, questions, issues. Otherwise, this is just moving forward, and again, it's a replacement of an existing playground, so it's a little different than if we were building just a brand new thing where we'd have to go through land use and some of those planning types of things. So it's a little bit different than that.
Any comments or questions or suggestions for Scott?
Glad we could find something for him to do.
Yeah.
Of course, you'll always be able to find something
Absolutely.
for him to do.
Well, and then and thank you for that. So I appreciate that. Just real quick, I guess on that, you kind of brought up a good topic, good subject, Doug. I think it's been made known already that Britt Tucker, the instructor of the program, who basically started and built this program up over the last maybe 12 or so years. They've won awards. The work that they've done and how successful the program has been. Mr. Tucker has made it known that he's planning to retire after this school year from the high school, and as of right now, I don't know what the plan is with the school district to either continue or not continue the program. Britt has expressed some concern. I think he's maybe said it to some of you at different times, and he's certainly had a number of conversations with my staff and me that he's concerned about where the program is going to go and what's going to happen and so forth. So I know that PRAC has specifically taken some actions in the past to support the program. Bob and Doug, I think, didn't you go as well in front of the school board a year or so ago?
Yeah.
And was it anybody else? I think that's who,
you,
and myself, to give Mr. Tucker a recognition from PRAC, and some of the things like that have taken place. But I guess I just tell you this just to let you know, and I don't know whether there's any position that we'd like to take as a group. Certainly the city loves that program. It's been wonderful, and the benefits, not just us getting improvements, but the value to the students and the things that they've learned, I think have been tremendous. So that's kind of hanging out there. We're not sure. I don't know what the school district does or doesn't have in mind, but Mr. Tucker seems concerned that maybe there isn't much attention being paid to the fact that he's retiring, and the status of the program is sort of up in the air. So, anyway.
I had an occasion to visit with Superintendent Didway after I think it was our last meeting or meeting before last, and just told him how much we appreciated all of his work and hoped that the program would be continued. He didn't give any commitment, but he said they valued the program as well very much, and that's about the information that we exchanged. But I wonder how a letter might be from us to the superintendent and board. Just something on the record that they could ponder.
How about we go visit them? The mayor suggested possibly a joint or a group where we all storm the
compound.
But it would obviously take some coordination. But the school board meetings this time of year are not as busy as they will be when we get into the budget cycle, and it would go a long ways if 3 or 4 of us showed up and we got the mayor and 1 or 2 city commissioners with a clear, concise message, and the message being that this is a priority.
Along with a get well card, because he's going in to have some, knee replacement, I think, on the 17th of November. Mr. Tucker is.
But I think the superintendent may know it's important.
Yeah.
But he serves at the pleasure of those board members, and those board members are the ones that are driving the bus, and they need to hear the message, and they hear it most when we sit in front of them.
Well, we were at a board meeting, just add to that, and they, I think it was pretty clear the appreciation that we extended to Britt and the school district, but that's been a couple of years.
Well, and the board has really cycled out since then, and that's why I say that. They cycled 3 or 4 new members in, I believe 4 out of 7, just in the last 12 months.
I think it should be more than recognizing Britt, though, to request that kind of joint effort be continued. I think ought to be also presented to them.
Well, that's my priority, is not to recognize Britt this time. He has been recognized, and we can acknowledge him. But the purpose, the goal of the event, in my opinion, needs to be stressing the importance to the community and the city that this class, this educational opportunity is.
I think it's a great idea.
Can I ask a question? Is this program, he's funded, his salary is funded by the district.
It's just a class. It's like a shop class or math class.
We just kind of give the money for the materials and so forth, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So it seems like that this is really the district's decision as to whether or not they're going to continue that program or not. They just hire someone that would fill that spot.
Yeah.
And our new mayor, when Bob and I gave the PRAC report, that was kind of the discussion after the report was, here's a concern of mine, and we together should probably do something between now and the end of the school year. And so I'm just trying to lift that back up again. Whether we do it in December, January, February, the message is going to get across. I will just tell you, January, February board meetings get busier. So,
well, I'd be willing to go visit with my neighbor, Larry Didway, and my old boss's son-in-law, I was married to Vern Duncan's daughter, so there's a little connection there. And just get his advice on getting on the agenda.
Great.
And not show up and try to surprise them, but
Right.
see what they're thinking. Maybe they've already way ahead of us, but just haven't expressed that publicly. But
I think that's a great idea, and then come back maybe at our next meeting and tell us, because I think this should be coordinated. The mayor showed interest in it as
yeah.
well. So, I mean, I think more than just you and I and a couple of us. I mean,
Well,
I think there's an opportunity to really hammer it home.
The Business Alliance would also, we had a presentation, I believe in our August or September, where Brett came and gave a presentation, and we are just so impressed with what he's done. So we'd be in full support of that, would attend.
Yeah, get some advice for us, and then let's see if we can
okay,
really.
I will volunteer to do
make this
that.
big.
Scott, sound okay to you?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll get that on my agenda.
Thank you.
Okay,
Good thing you're
on.
retired.
I'm sorry?
Good thing you're retired.
I don't know, I had time to work. Have we exhausted the discussion on Latourette Park? Anything else to say about that topic? Okay, then let's move on to movies in the park. Kind of forgotten what that issue was about, but
I think it was my email. I
Yeah.
figured it.
you
Yeah,
asked about it.
Doug had requested that we discuss
Okay.
this at
Yeah,
the next meeting.
I was actually going to, in the report suggested for a future agenda item, but I think it's great, and I want you to, if you would, relay my thanks to Denise and for getting this to us, and Rochelle as well. She gave us basically the movie choices that were available were sent out to us. I don't know, maybe it just came to me.
I missed that.
Well,
She
maybe-
said she was going to.
Yeah, I got it.
I got it in an email.
Well, then
Anyway,
we have it.
this last year was, as I recall, the third year of the movies. And
I think so.
the first year, I think Parks and Rec just came up with some movies to show. They were all family movies. The second year, they implemented something a little differently, and correct me if I'm wrong, Scott. But they asked people their opinion of suggestions for movies, and then they put these movies out for votes. Okay? And
Yeah,
so
this
it-
was the second year that we did that.
Second year, right.
This was the second.
Second year. And then this last year also, they did the same thing.
Correct, yeah.
And so they put the movies out, and whichever one was the most popular one was one voted on. Denise sent us the movies that were put forward for this last year and the votes that were tallied. The second year there was also a PG-13 that was voted on. I saw it, and it bothered me a little bit. It wasn't a family movie, but it didn't bother me that much. I did not see the 213, the PG-13 one that actually was voted on this last time. What I'd like to do is read you a review of the movie. The movie was Perfect Pitch.
Pitch Perfect.
Pitch Perfect, that's right. Parents need to know that Pitch Perfect, a winning musical comedy about a fiercely independent college student, will give teens and adults plenty to like. Expect some strong language. Quote, S-T, quote, bitch, quote, D blank blank K, quote, and one use of the word F.K, quote, drug references, and underage drinking, although not heavily emphasized. There was also some kissing and lots of sexual innuendo and some sexual discussion, plus several jokes about lesbian characters' attraction to a woman in the group. Although the women portrayed here are for the most part strong and confident, sometimes a shaming word, quote, slut, is used to refer to them. And I would have thought these movies in the park would be family movies, and this one in particular really offended me. And there are people, I understand there are people that got up and walked away with their children when they saw the nature of the movie. I think the movies in the park are great. I think the notion of requesting people for suggestions is great, but I think they should all be confined to PG or general audience movies. I don't think PG-13 movies should be included. I think when they were created with the intent of being a family movie opportunity. And my recommendation is that the advisory committee vote to strongly recommend that the movies actually presented for a vote be G or PG movies.
I would second that.
Well, if somebody else want to make the motion besides me, I can make the motion. Go ahead, Scott.
I'll move.
When you're done with your motion, before you vote, I just want to add a couple quick things, if I could. Is this a good time to do that? Just
Yeah.
and then that might help if you have any discussion. Yeah, I understand your concerns, and certainly we want to create the family atmosphere, and there's also the other part that people can make choices about what they want to see or don't see, or bring your kids or not. We don't want to make that a difficult choice, though. That's for sure. So I'm not saying that. I'm just saying simply that there is information and knowledge. But by putting it out to the vote, I think the idea was just to say, what would you rather see, something of this nature or that nature? I don't think that's been a common issue in the 3 or 4 years that we've done the movie. You said 3, and I'm reflecting. I think it was the third year. Yeah,
I know it's the third year.
Okay, and you should know because you're a sponsor, so you probably remember that writing the check, and so I defer to your opinion there.
It may be a fourth year, but I think it was a third year.
Anyway, it's been going for
third year of sponsorships.
I don't remember a concern of that nature, to that level. I know that there's always some potential for some content concerns. When you make a motion and say, limit it to the PG or, less than PG,
general.
If you think about it, and I've had this, I'm a parent, and I've had, my kids are quite a bit older now and kind of out of that area of dealing with that, but I recall where we would watch what we thought was a family movie that was PG, going back to my childhood or some time ago, like a
Top Gun.
Top Gun or Ghostbusters or Back to the Future.
Yeah.
So what I'm getting at is there's some older classic, sort of what are considered fun movies or whatever, before the PG-13 came into effect, and they're as content graphic as what you just described or more in some cases, because I remember as a parent being somewhat surprised, like, I thought this was a PG movie, but I guess the definition of PG has changed since 20 years ago or something like that. So
are you saying that the newer films that are out, because I don't think they're going to be watching old films to my knowledge, but it seemed like they want more recent ones.
Well, we're focused more on the recent because that seems to be what people are attracted to, but we have done a couple of the movies, at least I know, or if we start saying we're not going to do more than, we're going to limit the ratings, then it's going to limit our pool of, that's the other thing I wanted to mention too, is we have to select from movies that are available on the, there are a couple of different services where you pay royalties, but so if you're not aware of this, we do pay, you have to pay a royalty for publicly showing a film, and the amount of that royalty varies from movie to movie and from studio or ownership of the movie to different owners, and Disney is the highest and everybody else is kind of below that. And so anyway, I guess what I'm saying too is there's a list that you can actually show based on these companies that we subscribe to, where you pay the royalty. So some, I know I think the first year we did Harry and the Hendersons is something that just comes to mind.
That's the first year, then that had 3.
And that movie is at least 20-something years old, and it kind of falls in that category I'm talking about. It's PGE, it's PG, but it's a different, PG means a different thing than it did when that was out. So if we continue this movie series and it continues to be popular as we think it will be, I guess I just want to be careful with thinking about that discussion thoughtfully, that we're going to have a limited pool at some point of movies to select, and we certainly don't want to rule out sort of with the classic movies, or maybe we do, or that I'm just putting some additional thought out on the table for you to consider. So
We're not going to be we're not going to approve a list or give a hard, fast rules or recommendations, my understanding.
Mr. Chair, can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to address kind of my opinion. On one hand, I could really easily vote, and I'd have no problem if somebody made it just PG and down. But on the other hand, we're an advisory committee, and while some may say that the citizens voted on this, and so that's just the way it is, I also would have no problem giving staff the liberty to put up whatever for vote. However, I believe the final four could be approved by this board. And then that way we're on the hook for responsibility for choosing that movie. So once the votes are cast last year, maybe those four should have came to us for adoption. And then that would have given 7, 8, 9 members of the community the opportunity to read reviews like Doug did and come back and say, yeah, that one, I know it won the vote for that night, but it's probably not appropriate. And we could put something like that out there that's not hard and fast. And then the other thing I found interesting is looking through these stats that night, if I'm not a statistician like Doug, but it looks to me like the people had a harder time voting that night than any other night in picking even.
What I was going to say, yeah, first of all, you have a total of 8 GPG movies available, and so there was something to vote on. Each night they had two that were GPG and 2 that were PG-13, and every one of those nights, except that one, they selected the G and PG. If you go back to I don't think we have the authority to make that kind of a vote. I mean, we're not a governing body. I was thinking of a recommendation to them, but I don't think we have the authority to make the selection.
Well, we're policy making, and
yeah, and that's right. That's the point I want to make. In terms of, now I'm trying to find a Pitch Perfect. Yeah, in terms of Pitch Perfect. Pitch Perfect did get 33.12% of the vote. Toy Story got 28.06%.
Are there 2 movies per night?
No,
or just one?
Just one.
Oh.
So they were voting 1 out of 4 in each of these cases. So I don't think there's a dearth of movies that are available that we could put out there. I have no problem for people making recommendations because they're movies that your staff may have never thought of and so forth, but when it comes to actually saying these recommendations go on the list, G and PG are fine. I mean, values change, I guess, and certain things that were PG, I don't know when PG rating started, but I'm going to say 15 years, 20 years ago anyway, that probably was a PG then is not a PG now. Of Wizard of Oz, it was one of the most frightening movies as a kid that I ever saw. Those flying monkeys gave me nothing but nightmares. So, but the thing is, I think there are some movies. I think you always have a pool of good movies that people can vote on.
Do we have complaints?
Yes.
Okay.
I did.
You did.
I had parents tell me they're going to come. They're not going to bring the kids over. And they brought their kids over to every one of the movies the first time around. When they saw the Pitch Perfect, they only came to the first one, and I think the second was the Pitch Perfect movie. They didn't go to that or any of the subsequent ones.
And then the third one was postponed because of weather.
Right.
Yeah, and it came as a double feature.
Oh, we had 2.
Yeah, because we had a
that's why
postponement.
I thought we did.
I do have a question that gets back to. We mentioned it last time about maybe having 2, and I think it was next, but I can't remember the reason why. If we had 2 movies on the same night, one for G, PG, one, if they wanted a PG-13.
It was all because it was canceled the week before because of weather.
I know, yeah. So I mean, it was an outlier, but I'm saying, could it be something permanent?
Well, let me make a statement there, as I used to live directly against that park, and I could feel the bass in the house.
Okay.
And so one night is great and fine, but I don't think that the neighbors deserve that on a continual basis.
Yeah, I concur. I don't think for logistics and staffing, and then also I think, it starts getting late, and I think the crowd thins out. So we don't really want to do double features. We just, as Joyce had already said, the reason we did it just the one time is we canceled the one the week before, and we just said, hey, we paid for this thing, and we felt like we
that movie that Doug described, I tell you, I sure wouldn't be in favor of doing that. The description you gave, I think, is way out of bounds.
If I could, if you don't mind, if I just offer a little bit of kind of additional feedback here. You're an advisory group. You can make a motion and make some suggestions. We always listen to those. Your advice carries a lot of weight, as you know, and you're involved in a lot of different things. If your advice sets some parameters, it might constrict a little bit. With, like I said, if you say only, I don't know. I guess even some of the PG movies, we might want to consider going back a few years if we did pull from some older movies or whatever. I guess what I'm getting at is simply saying, I hear your concerns. I share those concerns. There's a couple sides to that, and I think my personal feelings would say I totally get that. On the work side, it's like, well, the community said we wanted to, watch this movie, but then again, the folks that didn't vote for it and showed up to watch a movie and maybe were not pleased with the content, we've got that issue. So it's not a perfect system. We're just trying to feel our way through how we select these and put them out there. So you can make your motion if you'd like to carry that forward, but your point has already been made, and I'm going to talk with our staff, and we can even have some ongoing. We're early for next year right now. We can have some discussion. Maybe we could even follow this up with another discussion at PrAC. And I liked what Sean said about maybe reviewing the movies with us and just saying, what do you think? Because you are an advisory committee for Parks and Rec related things, and that certainly is appropriate for you to look at the list, and we'll just say, hey, this is our list of movies. What do you guys think? And, it may not be a perfect system. There might still be some things that either you or some of the community might disagree with the content of some of the movies that are going to come up occasionally. And again, I guess that part of me says folks also need to be informed and understand, maybe if you're bringing young kids and you're not sure, maybe you might want to do. I know exactly which website you're on there, Doug, with that content thing. I go to that all the time for when I had kids that were younger, and it was very helpful. So I would have done some research before. But so there may not be a perfect system, but at least what I'm telling you is I think we've got the message as far as from the staff end.
I guess
I'm seeing a lot of consensus and head shaking when you were talking about it.
I guess I would say some of the PG-13 movies wouldn't bother me once, and I noticed that one of the movies that were shown was a PG-13. I didn't understand it because there was a whole lot of groups that I thought were all bad guys, and a bunch of them come together to become the Guardians of the Galaxy, and that was a PG-13. Now some of them, the Men in Black, Guardians of the Galaxy, and there were others here that I guess I personally wouldn't have objected to, but I don't know how you set that up. This one movie I think was really out of line.
I guess I have to admit I'm comfortable with the idea in a way of not that it's censorship, but I mean we start making these recommendations, and I think Scott's right. As a parent, I think I do have a responsibility to know what I'm taking my kids to. So to show up and then be offended by what was publicly advertised, that there's information all over the place about what its content is, I'm really not that sympathetic to those complaints because, in my opinion, as a parent, I think they failed a little bit as a parent to check that. Mm-hmm. That's just me.
Well, and that's
but I think we also have to trust that the people that are employed by the city, that they take this feedback that we're giving them, and they have to use their brains and say, maybe we did stray outside the lines of this one, and they use that as a guide then moving forward, and maybe then once we have the list, which of course we had it before the movies came up in August, not that we can change what it is, but at least we're aware. And maybe we can provide some feedback. Not that we would ever make a decision about what the what is or not, but maybe we can provide again that advisory thing about, well, we have a question about maybe Pitch Perfect. Maybe should it be on the list or not? And then maybe we do it that way, and it's less of a direct, we set a standard, we just have to kind of, well, almost in a way kind of wing it year to year.
I think there were a lot of parents that went there assuming all the movies were movies they could take their kids to. And I don't recall at all the listings of the movies showing the ratings.
I thought that was on the website.
It's on the website, but
No, I'm talking about the billboard pieces. I don't know that they show the ratings, and maybe I'm wrong. But
Could the billboard or whatever it is, the advertising, could it show the where the website you're talking about that, like disclaimer, disclosure, hey, check this out?
Yeah. And as well, if we need to put the actual rating on the billboard, I mean, I think that's a good idea as well. So, I mean, if that helps people make an informed decision, I mean, I think that's really where it is. And I'm not objecting. I mean, I understand the objections to the movie. I mean, I saw the movie and it wasn't one that I would have taken my kids to, especially younger kids at that age either. I just don't want to go down this road of, okay, we start filtering for this kind of content. Well, then what's the next complaint that we get that we then have to start filtering that kind of content? Yeah. Is it beyond just the family-oriented thing and ratings, and does it get into actual content? This can be a very slippery slope when you start doing something.
Yeah.
And I don't think we really want to go down that one.
I'm comfortable with Scott going forward. He's got the message. I'm really clear. I guess I would ask one question then to help move us forward. Since we have 3 years on this, and this is for you, Doug, is there enough statistical evidence in the 3 years of surveys to show a trend of the type of movies? Because, again, I looked at the graph and I see certain movies are getting 70%, and those are typically the kids' cartoons. So if that's a trend, why are we even offering a movie like this? And that could help you in your choices. Is there enough evidence there to help guide?
Well, I didn't do any kind of statistical.
And I'm not saying tonight. I'm saying if you looked at them all.
Big Hero 6, which was PG, got 65.4% of the rating for that particular movie night. Finding Nemo got 50.33% for that particular movie night. Pitch Perfect got 33.12% for that particular movie night. Guardians of the Galaxy got 38.73%. So the two highest ranking ones were in fact PG or G movies, generally.
And cartoons, though, I guess is where I'm looking at more of the content, not the rating.
Right.
Could you figure out, based on looking at the content, what
both Finding Nemo
what people are attracted to most, and then that would help.
Right.
I assume it's Denise that looks these up. It'd probably be nice to have some guidance.
I don't know. I think that was all kind of in Rochelle's ballpark. Wasn't it?
Well, it's her program that she does, and I think I want to be careful just to make it not to put that it's fault on somebody in particular, something like that.
True.
I think.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I think it's a good point, and I hear what you're saying. There's a lot of good points, and I get it, and I understand that too. I think there's I guess I would relate it to the success of our concerts in the park, and how that's elevated and become so very popular. And one of the things that Rochelle and her staff who help, and Denise is involved with that, and I am too. It's my department. I accept responsibility for anything that happens under my supervision. We've tried to make available a cross-section of varieties of music in the concert. So not just rock and roll. If we put up the Journey band every single time, we'd have 5,000 people there every week. Well, but then there's people that said, I didn't like that at all, and I want you to play some other styles of music, So I think it was it's the same idea as, while I think you're right about the type of movie, the kids, especially animated, those new animated things that are so great and so well done. We could probably show one of those every week and it'd be full. A lot of people, a lot of happy people. But then there'd also be an element that didn't show up that said, I wish you'd show something that had just a little bit of an older kid's feel to it, a teenagers. There are quite a few. I don't know if you've been to the movies, or there are quite a few teens that come, mostly I'd say like junior high and real young high, like pre-driving. Okay, it's Friday night. You can't drive. You and your friends and you're trying to do that independence, this is what we've noticed, and these are also some of the kids that we've had to kind of say some things to, like, watch your attitudes and behaviors, and please make it appropriate for what's going on here. There's a pretty good contingent of those kids that show up to these, and they hang out together, and they come, and they want to see something too. So I think what our staff has tried to do is say, well, like we've done with the music, is we want to offer a variety of different types of things and not just stick to one formula. So there's a little bit of a balancing act, but regardless of all that, I think I hear you, and your input and your feedback is helpful, it's important, and it's appreciated. And basically what I'm telling you is, if you want to continue with the motion, I don't have any issue with that. You can do as you wish. I'm just simply telling you, you've been heard. We'll probably take a look at how we select with that type of thing in mind, and then we'll also probably bring back some of the selections to you. Although I think we have at least kind of put it forward a little bit in the past, said we're doing these online votings, take a look and so forth, and we hadn't heard any of those concerns. That's not a fault, and maybe we didn't know which ones were going to rise up, and quite honestly, I wasn't even aware of exactly what the content of that movie specifically that is generating this discussion was. But
I think it should
so
not be strictly vote-based on the thing. I mean, if you get something that stands out.
Yeah, not everybody that goes votes, and vice versa. Not
Right.
everybody that votes goes, probably.
Well, and the other thing, I was thinking about this, there is no limit on who can vote, right? It's not
No.
and multiple people, and if you get from experience, if you get a movie that's popular with a certain part of the population, like junior high school students, and they figure out how to vote, they may very well come in and just vote repeatedly. So
Stuff the ballot box.
yeah, so they may skew some of the results. So that may be also why you can suddenly see some of these changes.
Scott, do you have enough information to take back to your staff?
I
we ought to
think it's a
move on.
case of you all on staff review the movies and see what the content is, because that one movie really upset me.
I hear you.
He has your message. So let's move on.
Well, incidentally, I disagree with you on Concerts in the Park. Almost all of them the last time around were rock and roll.
Okay.
And I enjoyed them greatly. But, you've dropped Willamette Falls Symphony.
I was
from the
thinking you were
list.
going to bring that up.
Yeah, you dropped Willamette Falls Symphony, and they weren't rock and roll.
Let's move on
Okay.
to item 6E, Park and Recreation Advisory Committee member terms.
Yeah, again, I think this will be a quick discussion here. As it's set up with the membership, there's 9 members every year. 3 of the members' terms turn over or expire. This year, the 3 members whose terms are up are Roger, Kathleen, and Sean. And all 3 of those members, as I've notified everybody on PrAC was copied, you had the you can go for if you wish to, you can seek another term. You can serve for 2 terms in a row, and then you've got to go off, and then you can come back if you choose to. 2 of the 3, so Sean and Roger have applied, just so everybody knows, for a second term, and I have not heard from Kathleen, and she had she indicated a conflict tonight and couldn't be here, so I don't know whether she intends to apply, but I would inform you that I've received 1 additional application, so I've received a total of 3. One, the other applicant that's not a current member is a recent former member who's reapplying now that a little bit of time has passed to come back on. So I have 3 applicants right now. Technically, the application date was, I think, yesterday or today, I can't, but that's kind of a loose date anyway. It's just sort of to encourage people to get your application in by a certain time so we can review, interview, and then make recommendations and hopefully appoint by the first part of the next calendar year. So that's where we're at, and I would just let you know that we need to conduct interviews at your next meeting because that'll be the last meeting of the year, and you would make recommendations on those interviews, and then you'd forward those to the mayor, and the mayor makes the appointment. So I would anticipate at your next meeting, like we've done in the past, setting up about an hour before the meeting, the regular meeting, so about 6 o'clock, we'd have time to do the interviews, assuming that there's the 3 applicants. Could be more by then, but that's where we're at.
Roger's position is a unique position, isn't it? That is, isn't that for the senior center?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Yeah, there is a designated Pioneer Center
Right,
position
so-
that Roger's in right now.
So
But
the
there's
other
still
two
two-
are either of the 2 applicants are for senior citizen,
No.
senior centers?
Okay.
You're safe.
Other general business?
I have one inquiry. I would like a status on the dog off-leash area,
Yes.
please.
So I had that under my staff report, so I'll jump to that right now since you asked. What I'd like to do is give you a more comprehensive status report at our next meeting, if you don't mind. We've got kind of limited information about that at this time. They're being implemented, but I'd like to actually have the opportunity to put together a little bit more of a thoughtful report to you, so we can, because part of the recommendation from PRAC, and staff is supportive of that, is to do this for about a year, then review it, and so I think some updates along the way, what's going on, how's it going. So I need to review a little bit further with my maintenance staff, as well as we need a little bit more time under our belt, and I can give you the status report.
Well, I guess my question, though, is I was under the understanding it hasn't been implemented yet.
They're being put in. The issue. So we have all of the signage and all that. We had talked about that at a previous meeting. It was just kind of a matter of getting those installed, but I don't think any of them are officially in, but we have advertised that these are available. So the signage and the post and sort of this are the boundaries kinds of things, those have not been actually physically put into place, but kind of technically we've advertised that those areas are available for that use. So that's why I'm saying we need a little bit more time to say, all right,
Yeah. My concern isn't how it's working. My concern is that it was over a year ago when we made the recommendation to move forward, and my understanding as of the last meeting was nothing had happened. And so that was why I brought it up tonight.
Yeah, we have all of those things that need to go into the ground, and our staff is working frantically to get everything done. And I could go back.
That's what I was asking about
I
then.
could go back and talk about workload and all that stuff
No.
again, but yes. And so
I'm
by
not-
the next meeting, they'll be in place, and then also
Gotcha.
I can probably relay a little bit of feedback at that point.
Okay.
So I understand. I misunderstood your question.
Yeah.
I thought you were asking about how is it going and that kind of thing. So
Yeah, no.
I get it.
Okay, next.
So
I guess I was expecting a grand kickoff, so to speak,
Yeah.
and that hadn't happened
Everybody
yet. So
bring your
I think
dog.
Joyce and I are wondering
Yeah.
why.
Yeah, we need a grand kickoff.
I see people out there with their dogs off leash right now. What's
Well, so
That's not even the park they're supposed to be off leash in. Wait a minute.
just to make sure, basically we've advertised, we've been putting that out, and it's also, I just approved a kind of a small article that's going into the Trail News for the winter edition. That's basically, this is exactly where we're doing it, what it is,
Okay.
et cetera. PRAC recommended it. We're doing this as a trial thing for a year. That's going in the winter Trail News, which comes out just before the Christmas holiday, give or take a little bit, in December. By kickoff, I just want to clarify, are you saying something like you expect some kind of ribbon cutting? Or
No,
something?
I was just expecting.
We're just basically
I was expecting
going,
we'd come to a meeting and we would get this great announcement that all right, all the signs are up and the dispensers are up and this thing's fully functional
Right.
now, and that's.
And that's what we're going to be looking forward
I'm
to.
trying to pull out.
I understand.
and we have 5
Respectfully.
complaints.
No, it's but we are going to be there when we do get the official dog park built, and there is going to be a fence around it, and we'll be there for that official ribbon cutting. Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was understanding, and I do, I hear you. Yeah.
Okay, future agenda items. Let's go to item 7A, Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee interviews.
Just covered that.
We have to pick a.
Next meeting.
Well, so the next meeting, just unless
The
there's
date
any
for our next
objection,
meeting.
I would schedule, unless there ends up being more applicants, I would anticipate a 6 o'clock start time, as we've done in the past. We would meet and just interview in the conference room, and then you'll discuss those recommendations and so forth. So
Do we have to
That's it.
change the date of our next meeting?
Yeah,
Yes.
we need to decide on that,
Yeah.
and you can do that now, or I had that, it's on your agenda there.
I'd recommend to look ahead at
Okay.
Thursday, December 3rd,
Or
Keep-
December 10th.
keeping where we've done it in the past. Let's see if we can, if that space is available and the schedule will permit. We
That's
could
the-
probably talk next Friday to confirm even.
Yeah, I just tell you that would be my preference. Again, you can choose, but logistically, that typically works best for meeting room space and for some different reasons.
What
And then
works
also
best, the 3rd or the 10th?
the 3rd, the December 3rd, the week following. If you kicked it over to December 10th, 2 weeks later, I wouldn't be able to do that. I have a conflict, so we'd be
Okay.
working around that. So.
December 3rd. Okay, and we start at 6 o'clock unless we hear otherwise for interviews. 7B, Parks Development Budget. Not sure what the background is.
Yeah,
on
let
this,
me.
but-
Sorry, I'm just making sure I got a note of what you just decided there.
And we could easily push that till next month, unless it's.
It actually. So I've got that listed as a future agenda item.
Oh, sorry, I didn't
I
see
believe that was requested at the last meeting that at some point we have a discussion a little bit more in depth about our Parks Development budget, which is the SDC budget, and maybe consideration of how we're going to move forward on some projects that we've, for example, the recent master plans that we've completed and some of that kind of stuff. So what I'd like to do, I put that as a future item, just to acknowledge that I know that you asked about it, planning on talking about it and bringing you some better information next meeting. I knew that I knew that the presentation earlier was going to go for a little while, so I think we needed a little bit more time to that. So that will be on the next agenda with some additional support information brought to you.
Okay, I guess we're down to member reports. Anybody want to lead off? Blaine?
I have nothing.
I have nothing.
I have nothing.
Nothing.
I do. Actually, I think it accompanied the email where I brought up the movies. I was pleased, but I didn't really intend to have the movie agenda. I was talking about something that I was going to talk about under member reports, but that's fine. The other thing I mentioned much earlier having some indication of where trails were in the city and so forth. I started in my thinking, focusing only on Parks and Rec Department. And I take long walks in the city, and I've been going through some of our parks recently. And there's some great connections between some of our arterials with each other and some of our collectors and arterials with each other that go through parks. And I'm not talking about this as an action item until we actually go into our next budget cycle. But I would suggest that we look at signage on major streets where you can get from one street to another via a park. And there's lots of examples. Homes to Lynn. There's, of course, we got that trail that goes off John Adams, and eventually you can wind around and get up to the top of Waterboard Park. You've got, well, of course, from Warner Milne over to Claremont, you get through there through Hillendale, and it actually has signage on the street. So there's a lot of people. More and more people are walking, taking strollers with their kids on bicycles, or I think just exercise or recreational purposes. And I think a lot of us on some of those trails I didn't know until I took the one there in Singer at Singer Hill Park and actually went from Holmes over to Lynn and to look at where those connector trails could be, and in our next budget cycle to perhaps have a line item in the budget for those kinds of for that kind of signage. So that's for a future agenda item. Oh, and I should, when I've done the walking through the parks, I think the 3 times that I've gone through Hillendale, the pickle court was being used, so that was great.
That's a neat idea. I think of like Sun River and all their little trail signage.
Yeah.
When you say that.
And there's one other thing I want to refer to. when Phil Yates came in and talked about the frisbee catches there in Singer Hill Park. I'd seen one of them before. I didn't even know what it was, and I counted a total of 5 of them as I was walking through. The pickleball was a different thing. You had several people coming forward that were willing to invest in that effort. But what I was wondering is, are there any frisbee clubs around that we could let them know that we have such things at Singer Park? I didn't even know what they were for, but he said they were for frisbees. And they're apparently looks like they're put out about a Boy Scouts group. They got signs recognizing a troop number.
You know, not this last Parks Day, the last year, there was somebody that approached us about, he's from the National Frisbee.
Oh, I remember
or
that.
Disc called Disc Golf Association, and he told us that there's big followings, just like golf tournaments, and it brings money into the community. And we never really able to get a hold of him again, or they never came up again. So
okay.
But that, just so you know, that's
okay if I can do maybe just a little online research, and if you actually have a group that's willing to invest in me. Some of them have some rusty chains and so forth, but the point is, if somebody's willing to step up, like the pickleball people did, I don't think we should take a reaction just based on one person coming in and using it. But maybe I could just do a little online search.
Sure. And also, I had that under my staff reports also. I was going to mention that to you as a follow-up, so I'll just give you a quick bit of information. Because I think at your last meeting there was that discussion about the specific, there was a citizen that requested about doing something, but that was kind of based on just replacing one basket, and I understand there were maybe some commercial advertising elements that might have tied into that, which we're not real comfortable with. What we are planning to do, what that did though, is kind of made us look a little bit at the disc golf course. And really, really short background. It's been a few years ago. There was a Boy Scout or a few Boy Scout a group that got involved and said, could we put in as a project some holes, and it landed at Singer Park. Quite honestly, it's not the ideal place because there's not enough room to put a full course in. It's only a few. I think you said, you saw 5 or whatever. There's 5 or 6 holes. I can't remember what it is, which is not a normal number, but it's like at least we've got something. And then we've also got a parking issue there. It doesn't really serve it that well. So you're talking about, if we had some kind of regional thing where people really wanted to show up, we'd actually have a problem if a lot of people came. It was kind of intended as a sort of a beginner area to sort of try it out. Well, anyway, the baskets that were installed have deteriorated pretty quickly. And what we are doing, John Waverly and I just talked about this recently, is there's apparently some kind of a grant available that we're going to apply for to attempt to replace all of those baskets. So I don't see any great improvement in the overall course being different because it's kind of limited there, but at least replacing the baskets, because the quality of those has kind of rapidly, I don't know what the issue exactly was with the maybe the type of material or the whatever, but at any rate, we would like to at least replace those. And so rather than just focusing on just the one that was requested by an individual, we're going to just try to replace all of the baskets, but we're shooting for a grant that's apparently open right now, and we're going to throw it an application at it and see if we can't get some money to replace those. So,
how widely does anybody know about these things?
I've played it since I was a kid. Church camp I started going to had an 18-hole course. And I know people my age that play every weekend more than golfers do, and it's a big deal. I've been up at Ski Bowl riding my mountain bike at government camp when a national championship was being held on their course. So it's a really big deal in the areas that have developed full 18. Like if Oregon City had the space and we put in 18 poles, you would see people there constantly. Go down to McIver State Park one day and do your walk, but drive your car there first. But they have an 18-hole course, and I guarantee on a Saturday, even during the rain, you will see people moving back and forth all day long. on that course, because we camp there every once in a while, and it's amazing how busy that place is.
Sean, my recommendation would be that we, if we're going to do it, and I agree, we should do it fully instead of replacing 5 in a park that's not suited for it. If we did it, say in the new concept plan, and
Right.
much more open space, maybe Wesley Lynn. I don't know, but that's even seems to be inadequate. But yeah, if we're going to do it, let's do it right.
A lot of these places that you see them though aren't Wesley Lynn's or the new Glen Oak Park. The places I've played are down in canyons through forests. In fact, Hood River, or not Hood River, Cascade Locks, if you're familiar with the port facility, which would be on the east side of town, has a small mountain bike track. And as you're going through the mountain bikes, every once in a while you'll see a cross this way, and you'll see one come back across your path. And I think they must have 9 or more holes there. But they're usually down through the trees and wooded areas that are natural areas, and they really don't do much.
So
Secret Park is one of them,
Which is
small.
which is ideal, and I think it's great for us to improve the 5 we have for now, because I don't see us adding capacity anytime soon.
It's the right type of area, but we've got some restraints,
Yeah.
constrictions. But I would say, since there's potential that we might get these funded without using city money, we might as well look at that. And if we're able to, since we at least do offer a limited version of that as an activity, because there are apparently some folks that do use that in our community, from what I understand. I think we'll just follow through with that. But you're correct in that, to do it really right, for the folks that are into this, you do need to do a bigger version of that. But at least we have a limited version of it, and we'll still make a run at this grant money, and we'll see how that goes. So
I was going to suggest.
Joyce, you're next.
Excuse me, I wasn't quite done on this topic.
You have more to report?
No, we got at this topic. I didn't want to let it go. There may be room for, you got 18-hole, you got a 9-hole golf course. I'm wondering if there's room for others. If you go on that top portion that opens up into that street that tees into homes, there's an area up there. Whether you might just survey the area and see if there were some other places you could put them.
Yeah.
Maybe we could have a 9-hole instead of an 18-hole.
That's actually a really good suggestion.
It's still the parking issue if somebody wanted
But it's I wasn't thinking of a group, but to let people know that such a place exists.
Right.
Not necessarily have group competitions or anything like that.
Okay. Joyce, you're up.
On your staff reports, you're going to talk about the pickleballers? Just asking Scott. Okay, so you got a nod from that. So I have gone down and participated a little bit with the pickleballers. It's a lot of fun. I can walk through the park and stop and play with them, and then go on to the farmers market. So Oregon City has so much to offer. The mayor has declared, and the city commission has declared, October to be Teen Traffic Safety Awareness Month. So the kids at school have been signing a big poster saying "Eyes on the road, hands on the wheel." So we all need to remember that, especially as the weather is getting darker, and rainier. Let's keep everybody safe in Oregon City. Eyes on the road, hands on the wheel, cell phones in the trunk.
That goes for everybody, huh?
Yeah.
Roger.
Okay, I have some reports. Pioneer Center, holiday wreath sales are brisk, and we are gearing up for a big push to encourage volunteering at the Pioneer Center. We have new volunteer posters and hope to get these out and about in the community. The last autumn hike was Wednesday the 21st and was a very positive season. Our annual appeal letter is ready to be mailed in early November. A dental bus will be here Thursday, November 12th for the second time this year as part of a $25,000 grant. Our Halloween costume party is scheduled on October 30th around lunchtime for senior citizens. There will be prizes, cookie decorating, a small craft table, and the movie Hocus Pocus will be playing.
What time is that, Jay?
That's around lunchtime.
Okay.
Under library art, right now, a call for artists was sent out nationally October 1st, when October application deadline. Artist interviews and selection finalists will happen mid-November. And finally, the last part is the Oregon City Parks Foundation bylaws are still in with a lawyer for review. And that's all I have.
Good report, Roger.
Nothing for me.
Well, I have 2 or 3 things. I'll make them brief. If I can find my notes here. In the report we got from Denise that she sends out to us monthly, I wrote down a couple of things under the recreation and meeting rentals. There were 1,173 different occasions. That's just amazing for 1 month. Those numbers are amazing. On Meals on Wheels, 2,546. A lot of people are really obviously hurting. Sometime in the future, I would suggest we meet at the pool so we can have a tour of the recent upgrades at the pool. We've done that before, and I'd like to propose we do that. And also sometime in the future, perhaps we can do a tour of the Ermitinger House whenever that's ready and finished. I've been driving by the library project, 3 or 4 times a week on my way downtown, and they're just working away like crazy. They've got a big hole in the back, and looks like they've got a lot of cement poured, and the project is well underway. I also went out by the school district transportation site they're working on, and they're just working like crazy out there too. And at some point, it'd be interesting to learn of the deal that the city was able to negotiate with the school district over the school district picking up costs that the city ordinarily would have to bear on street and other improvements. Not tonight, but sometime that'd be interesting to know. We've talked about the Willamette View tour, and I was going to mention the your item on the trail map, and I was going to give my support for that. Anyway, that is it. Our next meeting is the 3rd of December. Is there new reports?
Because I still need to hear the pickleball report.
Staff reports.
Yeah, I can be real quick. You've actually preempted a few of these that we've talked about already. So quickly, the Ermitinger House project. Since your last meeting, the project has been finished. The construction piece of it, it's finalized. We'll be having some further discussion about that. Bob, you just asked about a tour. That's a great idea, and that would actually lead to some discussion. We're going to be reviewing. We're already reviewing, but the programming and use of the facility is still something that's in the works, and some decisions have to be made. And certainly, PrAC will have the opportunity to talk about that. So that's where we're at on that. Your recreation update, you've got that. If you ever have questions, please let me know. Thanks for paying attention to those and picking up on some of that good information. Pickleball group, just happened to have a meeting with them yesterday. I think I'd mentioned this a little bit earlier, but they are proposing for some additional use of that site at Hillendale. I'll be bringing that to you probably at your next meeting to discuss further and kind of be thinking about it, but I would just report that it seems to be going very well. I went there yesterday and met with them while they were having one of their morning group get-togethers. So on a Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock, on a weekday when it was kind of foggy and misty yesterday morning, if you remember, before it got nice, there were a lot of folks out there, and it was really fun to see that. And that's a common occurrence from what I understand, and Joyce, I think you just echoed that. The Newell Creek Canyon, the master planning effort that's going on that you're familiar with and have been involved with to some level, there was a steering committee meeting on Monday of this week that I attended. That's the kind of the smaller group, kind of the technical advisory committee, and they're moving towards a sort of a final recommended master plan, which will be presented at their final, and they is Metro, final public open house will be held in December, Details will be confirmed soon, and they'll be distributed to you, so you'll be aware of that and can attend that if you'd like. That's all. The other things I had were already spoken of, so that's it.
I have one thing for the good of the order. I brought this up last year about this time, that normally January we come in and we vote for a new chair and vice chair. And I think those meetings are usually a little unproductive, as the person, three of the people have cycled out. They're not familiar with the new people. That's my first part. And the second part is I serve on another board that we vote in December, but we start throwing out names in November, so you can think about them. It doesn't mean we can't add another one in December. And since we only have one more meeting left, I just wanted to put out there that I intend to nominate Dan Tucker for chair. Tupper. Did I say that right?
Close enough.
So that guy down at the end for chair next year. I've really enjoyed his participation in PRAC so far, and I would encourage us to possibly consider voting in December, and that's up to you. To take effect in January, and that way you can complete the meeting in December rather than people switching
I think he
mid-meeting.
had to change right away since he's voted in.
But something to think about and put forward for next month.
Okay, good thought.
Would you like me to put that as an agenda item for you
Be
to
up to
consider?
the chair.
Oh, I think it's great. Yeah, good idea. Sooner the better. Just don't miss a meeting. I missed a meeting once. And I got voted chair.
In fact, I think that was my first vote of my first meeting.
that your
was
first
helping
vote?
make it there. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Are we about finished?
Just, I think a reminder, so we'll be meeting on December 3rd, confirm that, and we'll be meeting to do the interviews an hour or so early, but information to follow, and then we'll see you hopefully all next Friday at the Willamette Falls Tour.
Then we are adjourned at 9:26.